Hello there, I'm Genine Hill, health practitioner, healer, and spiritual seeker. Welcome to my podcasts, which are designed to educate, empower, and inspire, covering all manner of things that are heartfelt, soulful, and current. Today, I've got the pleasure of chatting with a dear friend, Chris, who is an astrologer based in the UK. And he's going to be sharing with us info on how upcoming planetary placements for 2021 are going to impact us both personally and globally, whilst offering us tips on how to best manage at this time, especially given that times are unprecedented. Welcome to you, Chris.
Hello. Nice to be here.
How are you?
I'm good.
Great.
How are you?
Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Awesome. So, Chris, last year we had you through Northwest Bowen come and chat with a group of clients about what was going to be happening for 2020, which everyone that attended found that incredibly helpful. And I still get feedback with people that came along saying, wow, that was really spot on. It really helped guide us and navigate us. So I'm really grateful to have you back today so that you can give us 2021 info that can guide us and inspire us and keep us on track. Now, likely the mix of audience that is going to be listening to this podcast, there's going to be a mix of people that know about astrology, that have had astrology charts done by myself and other astrologers, people that are not really familiar with astrology, but they want to learn more. So some of the questions I'll be asking will be for the diverse range of people listening.
Great.
So over to you.
So, I mean, last year when we had that chat, it was about a year ago now. It was on January the 8th, I think it was. And the main point of that talk was to talk about the conjunction that was happening on the 12th, so a few days later. But what we kind of did during that talk is because that theme that happened on January the 12th, it kind of ran throughout the whole year. And we were discussing the archetypes. You know, I brought up the Saturn and Pluto archetypes, and we talked about Capricorn because obviously Capricorn was the big thing and all those planets happening. So, I mean, the thing about astrology for the last year or so is that it's been very literal. So normally when we talk in astrology, we're talking archetypes and symbols, but it's actually been quite accurate to talk about astrology. What we actually talk about really has been happening. Like, I'm going to pull up my screen here and just to show you that way back when we were talking about you know, this is the talk that we did, and you can see here that I was typing up notes after the talk for your listeners. You know, it started this document on January 9th. So this is before anything had happened. You know, we were talking about Saturn and Pluto, and you can see here what I was referring to. I was discussing limitations, complications, restrictions were way before we knew what was going on.
I'm not actually getting anything on the screen. So
here we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
A little
Great.
So yeah, so
that's all right.
So basically, this is what these two planets were what I was emphasizing way back when. And you can see down here, I was, you know, in my little, you know, trying to put these all together. I kind of, you know, in my Capricorn way, I graphed it. You know, talking about mistakes here, spell limitations wrong, but you can kind of see where I was going, you know, and it was a case of, you know, because both these planets were in Capricorn, the work sign, all these limits, restrictions, boundaries, transformations, you know, that had to do with things like work, that had to do with things like not taking responsibility. So it's just been really interesting to see how that actually manifested before we even knew what was coming. And that was
absolutely.
And that was the theme for the year, and it still is to an extent, because we still have some of those influences happening. Anyways, we need to
Okay.
discuss this year.
Just before we
So,
just
yeah,
just
go for it.
yeah, just before we go on, just for those that don't have a background in astrology, can you just briefly explain when you talk about Saturn and Pluto? Because people will be like, well, how does that relate to me? I'm a Virgo, right?
Yeah,
So it's if a little spiel on
yeah,
what that all means and how that can impact everyone. I think that'd be really helpful for the listeners.
yeah, definitely. So every person has got a birth chart, but also what's happening now, like as we go on, there are things that are happening in the heavens that are also affecting us, and they'll affect people in different ways depending on your birth chart. But the things that I talk about here are things that are happening on a worldwide level, which is what we're going to talk about this
Okay,
year as well. So that's kind of been the
great.
so that's kind of what I talk about with that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, we're talking about the effects, the things that are happening in the heavens that are affecting everybody.
So I think the thing that comes to mind when we're chatting, and I'm thinking about the listeners, and I'm pretty sure the first thing they're going to be thinking about is 2021 going to be better than 2020?
The short answer, I think, is yes. You've got
Yeah, and everyone's going, oh, thank God for that.
because you know it yourself. You know what Saturn is like. Saturn was in power. Saturn was in
Yeah.
Capricorn. Pluto was in
Mm,
Capricorn. We had a lot of these Capricorn themes, which is very heavy. We're kind of moving
mm,
away from the heavy Capricorn to a lighter kind of feel for this year. There's
mhm.
obviously still
And
going to be,
what's that? And so, yeah,
so let's run through it. Yeah, so I've put together
great,
my little calendar of the year. So I've
awesome.
kind of gone through every month just to see what's going on, and I've kind of highlighted the main themes. But to me, basically, it's going to be a very Aquarian year.
Okay,
So
what does that mean?
so we're switching from Capricorn into Aquarian type theme. So Aquarius, I mean, you and me, we all often talk about Aquarius and what it means to be Aquarius. For me, the main
Yes.
thing with Aquarius is it's a very future thinking sign. It's a very progressive sign.
Mm,
It's an air sign as well, so it's going to be more rational. It's going to be more decentralized. So
okay, more of the mind.
more of the mind, less centered, more kind of a network is happening. I mean, the internet is very Aquarian. It's an Aquarian invention, so to speak, as
Mm,
science and tech is. Um, but to me, the main things for me that I think of are the archetype of the scientist and the archetype of the activist slash hippie, and that's kind of what we're
mm,
starting to see. It's a rebellious sign, Aquarius. We're going to
mm.
see those things happening.
I understand also that it's the sign of the humanitarian, and that
Yeah,
I always liken it to everyone is special and no one is special, that everyone has their unique place on the planet, and everyone equally contributes regardless of how that contribution occurs.
yeah, absolutely. Because Aquarius is a very decentralized sign. It doesn't like classes. It doesn't like there to be a hierarchy of people. It wants everyone to be on the same level, and that's where the
Mm,
humanitarianism comes in. A
mm.
lot of Aquarians tend to be social workers for that very reason. They want to do well for mankind. They want a brotherhood, so to speak.
Mm. And we are seeing that in bits already globally, aren't we? I mean,
Yeah,
we're definitely seeing the unrest. We're definitely seeing the rebellion in certain countries on certain key issues. But we're also seeing this banding together and this protesting, and we're all in this together. We're all equal. How can we make the changes that are going to benefit the world?
yeah. I think there's a bit of an itch that's happening, and the itch is that
Mm,
things haven't been right, and
mm, mm,
Aquarius wants change. You know, and the 60s had a lot of Aquarian themes happening through it.
Uh-huh.
You know, Saturn was in Aquarius back then as well. And Saturn shifted into Aquarius on December. So December the 21st of last year, that shift happened.
Yes.
Um, and there was a bit of a shift between April and June, and that's when the Black Lives Matter movement took off as well. So we kind of had a break from Capricorn in the middle of last year. And we had a few protests, Black Lives Matters, and a few other protests that happened in the US as well. So we kind of got a taster last year, but now we're all in now. There's no looking back.
Okay.
We're kind of going for it.
Okay. So what's that meaning moving forward for
So
the
we,
planet?
we're going to see a lot more kind of unrest. We're going to see a lot more, you know, rebellion. You know, in the 1920s of last century, you know, we had a roaring 20s. I think this is going to be a rebellious 20s, so to speak. So
Okay.
I think we're going to get
So
more of that.
for those listeners, some may be feeling anxious about the thought of unrest, particularly if they've got little children, you know, and there's always that concern about, are my kids going to be safe? Is the planet going to be safe? What does that actually mean in terms of unrest? I know it's something that can't necessarily be quantifiable, but just to create some ease or some understanding for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be, you know, the themes that played out last year were very large. I think Aquarius is a bit more kind of light about things. So any unrest that happens, I think, is going to be more of a protest. It's more of a protest movement rather
Okay.
than a civil unrest, so to speak.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. But the other thing that's happening is, as opposed to last year, I'm using last year as a comparison because it's just convenient.
Yeah, for
Last year,
sure.
last year we had a lot of
Absolutely.
cardinal influence. You know, this year there's going
What
to be
does
a
that
lot
mean?
cardinal. So signs like Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, they're the cardinal signs, and they're to do with change. So they're very much signs that are associated with initiating things, getting things going, moving things along. Whereas now we're moving into fixed signs, and fixed signs tend to be more, you know, stabilizers and routine based. Um, and the reason why I brought that up is because people who are fixed signs, such as Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, they may have more of an emphasis this year, especially if you know your degrees, which most people probably won't, and you know what transits are going to be in certain degrees, they will kind of impact you a lot more. But basically, fixed signs in general, they're probably going to have a harder time.
I mean, if you look at it logically, right, you know, you said the last year was all about the cardinal signs being at the forefront. Well, my understanding of the cardinal signs is they're the signs of initiation of change, right? Each of them in their different way, but that's the basis of them. And it makes sense, doesn't it, if you think about it in a common sense logical way, that it is, you know, the next after change is initiated, you need the stabilizers, you need the fixed signs, you need those energies to ground the change onto the planet, and so that things can move ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I think so as well.
Mm.
Fixed signs, though, tend to they kind of hold out that energy as well. So we'll probably see more of a holding out of some certain energies, but I will get into that afterwards. Um,
Okay.
but, so yeah, the main things I wanted to talk about with you, because I mean, there's you know, every month there's something happening, but for me, I highlighted
Mm.
certain dates and certain things that would be happening.
Great. So what you're saying is kind of like the most notable and obvious for our listeners to just have in the back of their mind that, oh, this is happening January 17th. These are the energies coming in February 17th, so they can work with them rather than not understanding them and feel at the effect of them as much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they can understand what's happening. So these dates are happening, but there are certain things that I kind of wanted to focus on more than others. For example, I wanted to focus
Great.
on February, and the assembly of Aquarius there, and Jupiter in
Okay.
Pisces. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So what's happening in February for us then?
So in February, we're having 5 or 6 planets that are going to be in Aquarius. So we're going to have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter
It's
in
a
Aquarius.
lot of Aquarius
It
energy.
is. And then on February 10, the moon will join for a bit as well. So we're going to have 6
Oh, wow.
planetary bodies in Aquarius. And we had the same thing last year in March in Capricorn. And that's when everything got locked
Yes.
down in terms of Capricorn theme. So I'm wondering if Aquarius themes are really going to be heightened this year. I mean, when you've got planets like, I'm just going to put this here, when you've got
Mm.
planets like, um, Saturn and Jupiter in the mix, they're more heavier. They're going to have more of an influence, on things.
Mm.
So when Saturn switches into Aquarius, you know, you're going to have more of a, authority rebels. It's the Saturn is a very authoritarian sign, and when you place it in the
Oh,
sign of
yeah.
level, which is also, Aquarius likes, Saturn likes being in Aquarius. It's one of its natural places. But
It likes it, really. That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the old ruler of Aquarius was Saturn
Mm.
before Uranus. So it's, even though it is domicile, it is, a natural home for it, so to speak. It's still going to shake things up in terms of shaking up the authority. But really, these Aquarian themes, if you think about them broadly, if you think about, um, the kind of unrest, that's a really big thing to focus on. And it's unrest in terms of people are just agitated. It's not like the agitation is external to you. I'm sure everybody has felt a sense of agitation. I mean, that's a bit of an understatement. Everybody's got a sense of agitation about something, about the way things are
Yes.
run, the world, politics,
Yes.
that type of thing. And Aquarius is very much that sign of, in the 60s, it was very much anti-Vietnam War,
Mm.
flower power, the kind of love
Free
that
love and
free
yeah.
love. So it's kind of going to be a rebellion against the norms, and especially in, the 50s were very Capricornian in a sense, very conservative, very kind of, stringent, those types of themes. And then Aquarius came along in the 60s and just kind of said, no, let's rethink things. And, as well in, the French Revolution and the American Revolution, there was a lot of Aquarian themes happening around then as well, heavy ones. So, yeah, those themes will, hopefully start showing themselves. I mean, they already have, but they'll show themselves in a way that's quite positive as well. It doesn't need to sound so, doesn't need to come across so negative. There's a lot of, I'm a Capricorn, so I say there's a lot of opportunity for Aquarius. Here, like the things moving to the online world. Aquarius is very online. Aquarius is very decentralized. It's about moving away from, one place to get something. And the way I kind of view this is, during the pandemic, people started to realize, hey, our supply chains and our logistics, they're very
Mm.
vulnerable. And I'm starting to think,
Mm.
for me personally, with, the way things are going to be distributed in the future, does there need to be a bit of a decentralization that will happen? Does work need to be more decentralized? We can't all be going in and cramming into a workplace. It doesn't need to be spread out a bit more. But anyway, so that's kind of my opinion on that.
And it's interesting you saying that, Chris, because you mentioned earlier as well that Saturn moved into Aquarius around the March, April time last year. And
Yeah.
I can recall not just globally, even personally, this real sense of I need to redirect, I need to pivot, I need to have my work and my message over the airwaves, there be more accessibility to that, because humanity is going through great time of change and upheaval, and support's required in that way. So I would say that people who are listening to this would be able to, agree with that. And I think it's also really reassuring for the listeners that, yes, we are going to have this unrest, and there is going to be change happening, but it is change that is truly needed for us to move forward, not just as individuals, but as communities and as citizens of the planet.
Yeah.
These changes need to happen, and particularly even environmentally, politically, on the grand stage. We're seeing that we are already witnessing this. I mean, you just have to watch 5 minutes of BBC News or CNN, and people are very restless. People are wanting change. I don't necessarily know that they know exactly what end result they want, but they are craving this change.
Yeah. And I agree as well. And I think, I don't think people have an idea of what they want, but there's nothing wrong with waiting for the masses to decide what they want rather than deciding from now. Having more of a democratic process of what the change should look like, so to speak. I think that's an important point where people come together to decide.
I remember listening to Pam Gregory, you know Pam, the UK astrologer, and I remember her talking about, it really is about bringing the hierarchy from a vertical position to a horizontal, that there
Yeah.
is no hierarchy. In fact, that it is, like I was saying earlier, everyone is equal, and no one's above anyone and no one's below anybody. There's equality, and that's, from what you're saying, this is the energy that is needing to be brought forward. And given what you're talking about, the 5 to 6 planets in Aquarius in February is going to, from what you're sharing with us, is really going to be the catalyst for that to start kicking in.
Yeah, exactly. And you can already see it happening, like during the French Revolution and even the American Revolution. American Revolution was about what? Rebelling against the English nobility and the monarchy. So was the French. The French Revolution was the masses rebelling against the aristocracy. People didn't like the elites and their masters. They wanted to rebel against them. And you can kind of see that happening. I dare say that celebrity has become a bit corny in a sense. And definitely billionaires are becoming a bit on the nose, a little bit. They're taking up all these resources. There's massive inequality. Those kind of tremors are happening, I think, personally.
Yes. Why should a minority run the majority?
Yes, exactly. Again, there's that getting rid of that hierarchy or reducing it.
So I notice in the major aspects happenings, you've listed on February the 17th, you talk about Aquarius is squaring Uranus and Taurus. Now, what does that mean, and what is Uranus about, and how's that in practical terms going to impact us?
Yeah, so I've got my little notes here, my trusty notes. If we go down
Awesome.
to Aquarius,
Perfect.
I've got Uranus as eccentricity, originality, unconventionalism, intuition. To me, Uranus is a very, you don't know what you're going to get type of planet. It is a very eccentric.
Yeah.
It's kind of like electricity. You don't know which direction it's going to go in. No one knows, when it strikes and how it's going to strike. And Uranus is a bit like that. It's that bolt of inspiration. It's that bolt of creativity. You know, it is again a
Like
very,
lightning.
like lightning. It's a very Aquarian planet as well. So we're going to get double themes happening.
Mm.
So, you know, to me, Uranus is very much about new structures. People say Uranus is about, you know, unpredictability, and it is about like really rapid, unusual change. But to me, when you when you move from Saturn to Uranus, as it is in the sky and the order of planets, Saturn is about the old
Mm.
order, and then Uranus is about the new order. So we can't. It's to me, it's like
Okay.
let's shift into the new order of things. So even though there's going to be unrest, there's going to be a new order that comes out of that unrest and that protest. So to me, when I see this, I mean, it's very much an unusual combination of things. You've got Saturn in Aquarius, and you've got them
Yes.
antagonizing, so to speak, or you know, in a challenging aspect to Uranus and Taurus. And
Yes. Because Taurus is a sign that's actually about tradition and conventionalism. So it's quite a contradiction.
yeah, exactly. So it's going to be really interesting to see
Mm.
what happens there as well. Um,
Mm.
and Mars, I think, is going to come into the mix in February as well. Mars is going to be in Taurus. Let me just check my notes. I think it
Well,
already
there's
is.
so much going on.
Mars is in Taurus from
6th of
now,
Jan.
and then
Mm.
it doesn't shift over until Gemini. So Mars is going to be in the mix there as
Oh,
well. But separate to that, when you've got Aquarius versus Taurus things, it's exactly what you said. You've got conventionality versus unconventionality. You've got conservative versus progressive. You've got you know, the slow life, the, you know, the very to the earth, you know, very
yeah.
soul of the earth type energy in Taurus versus Aquarius, which is very ivory tower at times. So you,
It's very hair and tortoise almost, isn't it?
yeah, a little bit, yeah, no, definitely. It's yeah, it's very different energies competing against each other. But I mean, you've got so many planets in Aquarius that Taurus is just, I think it's going to get shattered. And I see that playing out in the protests in America, for example. You've got the conservatives
Mm.
are very much
Mm.
not happy, you know, and I think things are shifting towards a more progressive state. And I think it's this kind
Yeah.
of this last roar of, hold on, our traditional values still matter, our conventional matter, you know, values still matter type of thing. But Aquarius is just steaming ahead, so to speak.
Given that the current theme that's impacting all of our lives, COVID, how how is that going to play out with this, the old order versus the new order unfolding? How's COVID in that whole mix? How does that play out?
Do you know what? I think Aquarius brings in a rethink of things. I think the way things have done in the past have not been optimal, and I think of it from the point of view of capitalism. You know, capitalism has, you know, I read this
Mm.
article that says the you can thank socialism for the vaccine, and you can blame capitalism for the distribution. It's actually an interesting perspective on that as well.
Very
But
much so.
um, but I think there will be an easing, like for this year in general. And that's probably one of the things I want to talk about. There will be an
Mm.
easing of things. Obviously, I mean, we all know that's coming anyway. There's got to be light at the
Yeah.
end of the tunnel, and I think it is very much the case. You know, the energies are getting lighter, things are getting less heavy. But it's also what I said before about maybe distribution systems need to be rethought as well. You know, do
Mm.
we have the capability to, you know, handle things like this in the future again? You know, I know in America, for example, their healthcare is completely failing, and that's, you know, because they don't have
Mm.
the universal healthcare. And I think the universal healthcare is a bit,
No, they don't.
it's a bit of a socialist mentality, which is very Aquarian. You know, Aquarius is all
Mm,
about helping the masses.
mm,
So there will be
yes.
shifts towards those types of things, and you can really see them on, you know, network channels that are very against, um, you know, universal healthcare, and now very much for universal healthcare. And you know, the majority, 70% of Americans want universal healthcare. Not to be too centric on America, but they are a good example of what's going to happen, I think.
I think this is really very encouraging for the listeners, Chris, because last year it just seemed like you talked about the strong Capricorn themes and just about, you know, old structures being, I suppose the word I'm coming up with, there's been a sense of desecration, if you like. And I
Yeah,
almost get this sense when I hear what you're saying. I see, you know, two guys in a boxing ring going round after round after round after round. And to hear, like, we've hit 2021, and, you know, to hear that just, you know, the universal planetary influences that you're talking about are bringing in a, you know, the message for the listeners is it's, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, there's going to be unrest, but there's always unrest and resistance initially to change before there's acceptance. So
yeah,
it's this thing of that recognition. And I also see you've got there on May 13th Jupiter in Pisces.
yes,
And I know in my chart I've got Jupiter in Pisces, and I know how that plays out in my life. And that is that I can say to the listeners, you know, hold tight. The light and the upliftment is on the way.
yes, and that's exactly why I wanted to put that in there, because not only is it a major aspect happenings of the year, but it is such a
Mm,
nice uplift as well. It's a bit of an oasis, this Jupiter in Pisces.
mm-hmm,
It is such a nice bright spot.
mm,
So what happens on May 13th is Jupiter goes into Pisces till about July 30th, and then it goes back into Aquarius until December. And then on December
okay.
28th, it goes back into Jupiter in Pisces. But that little oasis in May, June, July is such a nice time. So, what do we know about Jupiter? So, Jupiter is the planet of expansion,
Expansion,
it's the planet of truth. And, you know, what happens?
reward.
There's reward, there's luck, there's, let me go to my notes, there's things like, you know, purpose deepening. Yeah, there's all those types of things as well. But it's also plenty is a good one as well. But for me, the way I like to explain Jupiter is when you when you travel, you expand your horizons. When you travel, you learn more truths.
Mm,
You expand your mind. How education, learnings, spirituality, those are all the ways in which you expand yourself. So Jupiter, for the last while, has had so many knocks. It's been in Capricorn, which is its fall. It doesn't Jupiter doesn't like being in Capricorn. That's my natal placement. So my birth chart has Jupiter in Capricorn, as opposed
it
to
is
yours,
too. That's right. Yeah, mine's in
which is
Pisces.
Jupiter in Pisces, which is exalted. Jupiter loves being in Pisces, but basically, Jupiter's had a rough time, and Jupiter is a sign of truth. So for me, that's been. I remember
Mm,
mentioning this to you before. Was the truth is taking a hammering. We don't know what's true and what's not. You know, there is so much misinformation
yes,
happening, and like Jupiter,
absolutely. You just, yes.
Jupiter went into Capricorn December 2019. And what a bad time for it to go in there, because right when we needed the truth and things to come out, things were well hidden, and it's such a difficult
Yeah.
time for it to be hidden. So luckily, Jupiter has come out of there as of last December. Um, so we're kind of going to get better truth, so to speak, to come out. But Jupiter is also the sign of travel, and Jupiter has been in its fall in Capricorn, so travel's been restricted as well. So what I'm kind of hinting at on May 13th is that maybe there might be an uplift in terms of travel. Things might start easing in May. Things might start getting better. I mean, Jupiter's a bit of a party sign. He wants to have a party, but in Capricorn, he's forced to be quiet. We can't have parties. We have to be quiet. We have to
And
conform to.
mm,
Sorry, go on.
and sorry, and Pisces is the artist, is the dancer, is the
Exactly.
creator, is the psychic. Also, can I just add too for the listeners, um, Chris has been saying that Jupiter is the planet regarding travel. Even if it means that physical restrictions are not lifted, this is going to augur a vibrational energy where you will be able to travel within metaphysically. And what do I mean by that? You'll be able to explore your creativity more. There'll be more fluid sense of feeling and less restriction.
Yeah, yeah. Because Pisces is a very mystical sign,
Fluid.
very,
Yeah.
very fluid and very mystical, and it's a very internal type
Mm,
of placement. Pisces is the best at escaping. So
mm,
it's kind of going to have that feel to it, but it's kind of like, if Jupiter is a bit of a party planet, so to speak, and it's in Pisces, and Pisces, how can I say this politely? Pisces likes Pisces likes to
indulge.
indulge, in its little addictions. Basically, a party with Jupiter in Pisces is basically everybody gets high on mushrooms and has a great time. You know,
Or they meditate.
or they meditate. Either one. We're not condoning those, but it's that imagery that I'm trying to show, and it's based
Yes.
on what you said before. It's this internal journey that you take. It's kind of like
Yes.
a trip.
And that's why I'm saying to the listeners, my message is, don't get discouraged, because even if restrictions haven't lifted, there's going to be, and I'm repeating myself, another energy. And I'm not saying go out and grab mushrooms and get high. There's just going to be another energy with more. You're going to feel you've got options. Whereas when Jupiter's in Capricorn, it's quite cool. It's quite stoic. It's quite solid. It's all about we've duty and responsibility. Got to get the job done. Whereas Pisces is about, that flow, that freedom, that beauty, that connection to, like you're saying, the mystical and the divine.
Yeah,
That you can just see there's such different vibratory forces to be
yeah,
actually dealing with.
yeah, exactly. It's a bit of a spring break. And
Yeah.
the other thing you've got to kind of remember is that Jupiter and Pisces, the energy that comes with that is like an envelopment. You know,
Mm,
it'll envelop you. It's an energy that wraps around you. And I think
yes.
it's a very interesting one.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. So it really looks like, though, that the main aspects, in a nutshell, that we're dealing with is this Saturn Aquarius versus the Uranus in Taurus. That seems
Yeah.
to be quite a consistent theme through 2021. So how, for the listeners, how, if we put that into day-to-day practical terms, what are some strategies or some ways that they can manage through 2021 with those squarings?
I think, to me, it's about challenging old routines. It's about challenging old ways of doing things and starting to realize perhaps there's a new way to do things. Maybe the old traditional mindsets um, need to be more progressive, or maybe even vice versa. Maybe we need not only more of a routine, but maybe we need more of a return to traditionalism. Maybe there is too much, you know, internet, and we need to come back to the earth. You know, those are the
Great
types of,
point. Great point, Chris.
yeah, those are the types of, because I would err towards, me as a person, I would err towards the progressive. I like being future orientated, but
Mm,
if you ignore Taurus too much, I mean, Taurus is an earth sign, and at its core, it's about being close to the earth. It's about managing your wealth correctly, making things plentiful. You know, Taurus is about generating things, and Aquarius doesn't like possessions. Aquarius.
y-
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, I just had this thought. I was having a great conversation with my son yesterday, and I'm seeing now through this talk, we were actually playing, or not even playing out, we were discussing without realizing this Aquarius Taurian square, because he was talking about, because he's starting uni in March, he was talking about how, you know, how things are changing, how, eventually, mum, it's going to get to a point on the planet where we're not going out, it's all done online, and we won't actually be seeing people in the flesh. And and he said that, and I could sense there was some sadness, obviously, around that thought process. And then I heard myself pipe in and say, because, as you know, I'm a body worker by profession, and me saying, but touch is so important for our well-being as human, as humans. And without touch, it really impacts our endocrine system. It affects many systems, but our endocrine system, the hormones, where we have the serotonin, which is the happy, the happy mood. And then we've got, as males or females, testosterone and estrogen. And then we've got dopamine and oxytocin, and how touch is so central, and connection with other humans in the flesh is so central to our well-being.
Yeah,
So I'm just really fascinated to see that this, like you were saying, I mean, because Taurus can be an incredibly stubborn sign, but I think from what you're saying, that don't throw, what's that? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like,
yeah,
with squaring, it's looking at the best of both, the progressiveness, and also keeping the traditions, and the feet on the earth, and the honoring our connection to the earth, so we get the best of both.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So something we probably forgot to say at the beginning was a square is like a challenging aspect.
Oh yes, good point.
It's a challenging aspect, but it forces you to deal with those themes. So the themes that
Yes,
we discuss, we're being forced to rethink things. There are other aspects that you can get by without noticing. That hang around the background. But this is like it's a force, and it's like a wheel. It's to get it going and get it moving and get progression happening. You've got to move those spokes in the wheel. And this is what this is. When
yes.
you do with those two energies, you're kind of getting things going. You're going to a better place by dealing with those issues and working them through, in my opinion.
Well, it's like they talk about, it takes very tense and heavy forces to create diamonds, right?
Yeah, 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 exactly. And that's what a square does, essentially.
Yeah.
Gives you that resilience.
Yes. And let's face it, fixed signs are all about resilience.
Yes, they are very much so. They're the most resilient.
So we really need these aspects this year to not only ground the change, keep us steady through the change, and for that to build resilience. Because I recall last year, with all the initiation of the cardinal energies, as Chris mentioned, listeners, before, your Capricorn, your Libra, your Cancer, and your
Aries.
uh, Aries. Thank you. um, they did this big push and this auger of change, but we need those fixed elements to come in and go, okay, we need to anchor this now and to keep
Yes.
moving forward.
Yeah,
So it does really, having this chat with you, it really does highlight the positive that's coming from a really bloody tough 2020.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Just going back onto that Aquarius Taurus theme as well.
Yes,
It's Aquarius. I mean, I'm in lockdown here in the UK, and
yes.
Aquarius is a very detached sign. You know, I remember
Mm,
watching a TV show where in the future, everyone is kind of in their own little room at home. We only
yes.
connect via the internet, via a virtual means, and that is kind of happening. And I'm kind of realizing now, as you were saying about Taurus and touch, that
Mm,
coming back down to the earth, like coming back down to You know, and I mean literal earth as in, you know, a hike or the bush or
Yes.
rural settings can maybe help with the, I don't know, is it the calming of the Aquariusness of the energy of the virtual, you know, just to kind of balance that energy off.
Because Aquarian energy can have a mad professor, Tasmanian devil archetype to it as well, when it's like a spin, like a spinning top, you know, because it's air, and you know, air is a higher frequency of vibration than earth. I mean, that's a metaphysical fact and a quantum physics fact. So we need that Taurine grounding to go, hey, let's bring all of those great ideas and bring all of the change, and let's earth that. It's really important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so as well. And those
But
two,
on the other hand, it's also really important that we're not fixed in our conventionality and our tradition, that we're not open to change. So it's a twofold fact, isn't it?
exactly, exactly. I don't know what the manifestation is exactly, but we can know what the themes will be,
Yes.
and the themes that we've discussed are basically on those dates. We will be experiencing those types of clashes, so to speak, or those
Okay.
challenges.
Yeah, yeah, great. Okay. I think it's really helpful, like in the talk you did last year, for people to have, even if you don't necessarily have a broad understanding of astrology, just hearing the basics around the themes and how you can manage those, and that you can look out externally in the world and go, yes, there's unrest happening, but it is changing, and it's crucial for these events to occur, so there is forward movement. And I think that just gives everybody a sense of reassurance
Yeah, yeah,
and relief.
yeah, absolutely, and a sense of power as well. Because I remember
Yes.
in the last talk, I talked about, you know, what's one of the ways to combat, you know, this year's ill effects, so to speak. And one of the things was planning for your work. You know, your work and your business will need some planning. And obviously, I don't
Yes.
know how that would manifest, but there was a sense of truth to that, where we did need a plan for our work as one aspect of that.
Absolutely. 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 So is there anything else that you would like to add before we finish today?
Um, no, I mean, there's loads of happenings. I will have this set of notes for your listeners to go through. I'll probably add some notes to these because they're just going to be just dates for now. But I might add notes to things that have been interesting, like the Mercury retrograde in Gemini in May as well. Um, you know, what does that involve? So I might have some extra notes for that for the year, but basically, all in all, for this year, I think it's just going to be a bit of a lighter year um, compared to last year. But again, there is going to be an emphasis um, on a bit of a protest year. I think that's the kind of theme for this year, a bit of a protest.
Okay. And this work, and it sounds like also this working through, you know, bringing the change in, but being able to ground while that change is unfolding.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really interesting point as well.
And also, I think just to highlight as well that, you know, where we can become really stubborn and dogmatic. And I think we'll actually see that Aquarius square Taurus playing out on the big stage. I think we are going to see that happening on the political stage,
Yeah,
and probably with the economy, and just general social issues on the planet. I think we're going to see that stubbornness
yeah,
versus the progressiveness,
yeah,
and that's, it's almost like that's got to play out so there can, you know, typical Libra here, say it's got to play out so there can be an equilibrium.
yeah, yeah. With Pluto coming in, switching to Aquarius in 2023, the equilibrium may switch over more to one side than the other. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how those themes play out and if there is an equilibrium that can be achieved, hopefully.
Yes, yes. Well, it will unfold, won't it? We'll be reviewing. We'll review that in 2023. Great. So, so these notes will be made available for the listeners. If any of the listeners want to touch base and get in touch, or are interested in finding out more about astrology and getting birth charts done, or Saturn charts, or life purpose charts done, you can contact me at www.northwestbowen.com.au. And like to thank Chris very much for your time today, for your amazing input and knowledge, and for just giving us a message that 2021 is certainly going to continue with change, but it's going to be lighter. There's going to be some really interesting playouts of those contradictory energies, but we've got that beautiful Jupiter in Pisces reprieve. As you said, the oasis, which in the UK, that'll be summer. Yeah, it'll be summertime for you, or coming into summer, won't it?
Yes, it will be summer and it'll be hopefully glorious.
How lovely. Great. Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
No worries, a pleasure. It's great to be on and great to chat.
Awesome. Okay, we'll talk soon.
No worries. Bye bye.
Bye bye.